April. I guess we will call to order the April 1st meeting of the City of Portsmouth Economic Development Commission. Thanks everyone for being here. Just to give everyone a heads up, this morning we're going to try to run through our agenda a little more expeditiously than we might have. We're hoping to close the formal portion of our meeting a little closer to 8:30 and spend the rest of the morning recognizing Nancy Carmer. She'll be joining us at 8:30 and thanking her for all of her service that she's given to the city and the community in her long tenure that she's had here and all the changes that she's seen. So sorry if it feels like we're running through things quickly. I know we've got a good meeting and a fair amount to maybe cover. Do we know, is the city assessor going to be joining us?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock, okay, perfect. So maybe we'll jump around a little bit, but first order here is our minutes from our March 11th meeting. Did you have those that we could circulate, Sean, or I know we...
I did, yes.
Okay, great.
Move we approve the minutes?
Do I have a second?
I just noticed the one comment, the date says February 11th, and it should be March 11th at the top of the minutes, so just something to note. And I'm not reflected as being attended.
We should fix that.
A little personal.
Okay.
I can vouch for Ben, he was here. Great. So with those changes, do I have a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. So first we've got on our agenda today is the business retention and expansion. I know Alan and Bob have been continuing to make headway. Alan, you want to walk us through?
Sure. Andrew as well, Andy as well.
Andy as well.
Quick update, we have got what I think is a final cut of the survey that we've run through. We just need to give one more read, and then we need to connect up with the UNH folks to have them take a look at it and start the process. There's a question, Sean, we probably need to discuss. When we talked with Nancy about it last, there was some budget money put aside for this year, but probably not enough to cover the full load, and so I think there was some planning to pull from the next fiscal year, so we should discuss that, which will go through drive timing, and we can work out those details. And then you've got the draft, so any comments back? Bob's already come back and said we're pretty clean on it, so great. That is where we are. Hope to get that survey done, and funding, pending funding, we can probably get it done in the next 60 days.
Great. And is that, I know it's in Word format, is that going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be an electronic.
Yep.
It's going to be an electronic survey, and right now the notion is to go out to all the businesses and business contacts we can. There was an open item to check with the state to see if the Attorney General's office to see if we can get an updated list of contacts for businesses in the area.
Great. Okay. Good. Thanks, Alan. Look forward to getting that rolled out. So the next, we've got our sustainable cities. I know, Tom, you had a good update for us last month with some changes. I know, or I guess I'm curious to hear if you guys have continued to meet or might want to broaden the kind of purview of what you're looking at in the scope of sustainable cities beyond just the EV.
Well, we have not met. I decided not to burden Nancy in her last month of employment, so we'll be doing that sometime in the next month before our next meeting.
Great.
I did have one homework assignment. Somebody, I think it was Vince or someone, said I ought to call the folks who are doing the charging station in Rochester on a private enterprise basis. So I did that. Spoke to Victoria Perez. She's one of the two owners of the place. I'm sorry. Also notice I'm hiding outside the camera, but I spoke with her at length, and she explained that I think I might have mentioned this last time, that she and her partner have purchased a piece of land right adjacent to the Walmart shopping center, which is just off one of the Route 16 exits in Rochester. They are planning, and they've received their municipal approvals for a standalone electric charging station. There will be no store, no coffee shop, or any other type of amenities.
There'll just be 4 level 3 and 2 level 2 charging units. She's looking at this as solely the purpose of extending this arteries of charging stations, separate from what the state is doing, but she's a EV owner, and she and her friends who similarly have electric vehicles suffer from the same sort of fear of running out of electricity at some point in the middle of nowhere. So she's going after the on-again, off-again highway customer. The only amenity beyond the charging stations will be a canopy so that people will be shielded from the weather during inclement winter and rain during the summer. I questioned her about the selection of the powering and that type of thing, and learned actually quite a bit about charging stations that I wasn't aware of before. She says that, and she's done a real deep dive on this before she made her business plan, but she says there are charging stations that go from 50 kilowatts to 350 kilowatts. The sweet spot, she says, is about 150, and that's what she's putting into her station. She says there is no uniformity in, and the amount of the kilowatt has a lot to do with the battery capability of the cars. She said ultimately most cars will have batteries that will be large enough, therefore extending their distance, that you want to have a 350 kilowatt, but right now she thinks most people should plan to have about 150 because that has the greatest number of current vehicles out there, but have the capacity at some point, essentially with the infrastructure, to go to a 350 kilowatt capacity. She has priced it out at $50,000 per unit for the 150 kilowatt units. In her case, there was no need to have the extra transformer, because what she referred to as a phase 3 electric power transformer was installed in that Walmart when it was built out. So she's been able to hook into that without all the costs that we've heard from Peter Rice is sort of the biggest burden of doing this. And her marketing plan figures out that she will need 6.5 hours a day in charges, and she's also figured out that although it's based somewhat on the size of the battery and the amount of the kilowatt, that it's going to take an average about 30 minutes to essentially fill up or get to about 80% of capacity. And so at that, in order to break even, she has to get, sounds like about 13 charges a day for every unit. And apparently she's, based on that business plan, she's got private funding or bank funding for that. So this is sort of the example that I was saying we needed to find of how private enterprise would sort of tie into this. She did say that she did talk to the people at the state about the Volkswagen Trust, but she was too late in the process, so she didn't even apply for that. And then the last comment she made when I was exploring it with her is that she's been approached by 2 other property owners about partnering on something like this, so she's actively under consideration. I asked her if she had been approached by any municipalities for doing some type of a private-public partnership, and she said she had not, but she would entertain something, or at least have a dialogue on it, because I think she really wants to go all in on this electric vehicle charging as a business plan. She also said that I asked her if she would be willing to talk to this group or some other group in Portsmouth. This is an example of how this is done from a private perspective, and she said she would be happy to do that. So I noticed on our agenda, we were talking about potential visitors. If we wanted to have her come down and spend a half hour going through this process, she would be happy to do that. The only other comment, I don't think this had come out when I was here last time, but I think about 2 weeks ago, I read a news article where Starbucks and Volvo are partnering on a pilot program to install install charging stations at 60 Starbucks between Denver and Seattle to see if primarily it won't be limited to Volvo, but it's really underwritten by Volvo to see what the usage would be as a location for charging stations. Again, the idea being if somebody gets off and has a half hour to charge, if you've got a Starbucks coffee next door, chances are they'll buy one. But again, that's another example of how the private, the sector without having to have government grants is going to come into play.
Great. So, pretty fascinating. I think it would be great to have her potentially in as a speaker and kind of understanding what other potential, if she's heard from anyone in Portsmouth, but knowing if there's other private owners working on this already in the community, it's good to know as the city's working on planning within our municipal lots too.
Mr. Chair, if I can, we just notified the council, and folks will start to see the impact when we start to reconstruct the Bridge Street parking lot. But what we're doing there is laying the conduit and taking care of all the subsurface work to, when we are able and can fund it, place the charging stations there in the far corner. That's by the corner of Maplewood and Deer. Maplewood and Deer? Maplewood and, I should know this? Yeah, that corner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
I think the only other question is, would we want her to come and speak in front of a joint session, maybe with parking and transportation safety, or if there are other boards or folks that could benefit from her speaking to us? I think it would be good to either have a joint session or invite them to the EDC meeting.
Yeah. That's a great suggestion. I also wonder, zoning-wise, if it's a private lot. I mean, I think in Rochester it's probably unique. I'm not sure that there's many vacant lots that would be prime for development for that use in town, but if they're prohibited from doing so on other private lots, apartments are be another interesting thing to touch upon. But I think, who's the city councilor on parking, traffic, and safety?
Andrew Bagley. I do believe, too, the redevelopment of the Burger, I don't know if this was brought up at the last meeting, the Burger King lot, the Common Man, they plan to put EV chargers in there, too.
Cool. Yeah, I think someone had mentioned that, but I hadn't heard that for certain. Thanks. Cool. All right, thanks, Tom. So next we have the Land Use Subcommittee update. Sarah, has that group met since?
We met as a subcommittee, so I can talk about our subcommittee, and Assistant Mayor Kelly is also on the same subcommittee, so she can supplement anything I forget. One point of information is that the Land Use Committee will be meeting in this room immediately after EDC meeting starting in May. So just to let folks know. So that means that my updates, or our updates, might be delayed by a month or so. So when we met, we're part of the Supported Market Subcommittee, which looks at incentivizing affordable housing and workforce housing, and there were 5 areas that we had to look at. So one was understanding for the governor's budget where there might be allocation for housing, and I did not follow up on that, so I don't know if there was anything specific mentioned in the governor's budget.
Not specifically, but I'm working very closely with the senator and the $100 million pledge, and that's kind of a joint venture from my side of this and the legislative subcommittee.
Excellent.
So I'll have updates on that, too.
The second point was to revisit the housing committee that was founded under Councilor Perkins Quokka's tenure, to see if that can be revitalized, restaffed, and refocused on addressing some of the issues that we're looking at in the land use subcommittee. The third item was around a Airbnb study to understand the economic impact. There are some legislation at the state level, which I think we've talked about here as well, to get an understanding of whether enabling, Airbnbs in a community, what the impact is on housing, and what Portsmouth's stance might be. And that's probably another crossover with the legislative subcommittee. The fourth item was to look at the downtown impact for the RSA 79E, which is a state law that encourages investment in downtowns and village centers. We were going to be looking at opportunity zones within the city of Portsmouth, or perhaps city-owned properties that could be targeted for development or selection for affordable housing locations. And then the fifth item was to look at enabling legislation to permit accessory dwelling units, so to basically be able to apply without, to be able to be granted access to have an accessory dwelling unit without having to apply for by exception. And then the sixth item was looking at fee and lieu research. So when developers have the opportunity to put forward a development property where there is additional density, they oftentimes have to either offset by contributing to an affordable housing pool or more green space. So we wanted to take a look at who is taking advantage of those opportunities and where those investments are going. Is there anything else?
I would say off that, we had a great public comment where a resident was talking about how developers have been able to double dip on those. So they are able to, use green space to not only get height, but also density. And so figuring out how we can potentially stop that in lieu, trying to fund we have a housing trust that is empty. So trying to figure out ways to fund that, as Sarah had mentioned.
So those are the 5 areas that we have. So a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas, and then I do expect when we get back together in our first meeting in May that we'll formalize some action.
Great.
And I can reach out to Councillor Monroe and try to get updates on the regulatory side, and so we can make sure that we get those updates in here too.
Thank you.
Great. Well, good work on that. Keep us posted. I think it would be interesting, and maybe at some point, I guess if you guys think it would be helpful for kind of a bigger discussion between that group and ours, or continue to report out from the subcommittee. But I think if there's opportunities for us to understand what recommendations are coming forward or might be put before the council. Great. Thanks. So I see that our guests have joined us from the city. If anyone else didn't have anything for the land use, I know we had you not scheduled until 8, but if you'd like to join us a little earlier, welcome.
We have 2 empty chairs. You guys just wouldn't sit near each other.
We can roll and
Great. So thanks for joining us. It's the City Assessor Roseanne Maurice Lentz and Emily Goldstein. We thought it might be a good time to have you both before the commission to maybe talk a little bit about the upcoming revaluation that I know was announced last week. I think if you had anything formal, it'd be great to run through that, or we're happy to kind of explain.
Well, nothing really formal yet. We're right in our analysis phase, but everybody's been seeing what's been going on in the market. Obviously, the residential market has moved at a much faster pace than the commercial market, although the industrial market is very hot. Our Class B office market, we're trying to figure out what to do. We have been talking to many of their tax reps and brokers about what's been going on out in the market, and they're saying right now that there's high vacancy in that Class B market, maybe some Class A, but not so much. So they're trying to figure out what they're going to do with that space. And from what I've been hearing is their intention is to try and make that space smaller to attract mini office environments where they're still having people work remotely, but having a base for them. And we have already seen that trend happening before COVID, but I think that trend's going to be more prevalent right now. In the city right now, the apartment rental market is just through the roof. They can't get enough of it. So I'm sure as you've seen with applications coming in, that the intent to try and build more of those type of structures in the city to attract, because Portsmouth is so attractive, especially to that young urban individual, and then also to the a retiree that has a really good nest egg, that they can afford the quality of life that Portsmouth gives them in that downtown area. So those are the two things that we're really seeing in Portsmouth. Plus the waterfront property, whereas right after the recession, nobody really would touch it because of its expense. Right now, it's very attractive.
Great. I think a couple questions that I know I had were, when the last revaluation, like the citywide, I know there was an update that was done on some properties a few years back, but could you speak to when the last time was that there was a full revaluation done and kind of the timing in between? And then also comment maybe on the total. I know the tax rate's going to be set based on the budget, but I think it's helpful for this group to understand, taxes may be going up or assessments are likely going up, but what does that truly mean in terms of the tax burden for homeowners? And also, I kind of have some follow-up questions, but I'll hold off on those.
Okay. So our last statistical revaluation, which is basically a full revaluation without the measure and list, was in 2019. And then we typically do an update in between revaluations, but because of COVID in 2020, we chose to step back and just wait and see, because everything was really going fast at that point, but it didn't slow down. So in 2021, we were scheduled to look at it again, but we were right heavily in the midst of COVID, and again, we said, well, let's sit back and wait. And you did see a lot of other communities do their revaluations, but unfortunately, the market hasn't changed, so they're going to be doing more revaluations this year or next year.
Yeah.
So we chose to wait and see. I think it was a good plan for Portsmouth to wait and see, because hopefully, this market will stabilize a little bit and our values won't take off as much. Typically, when the budget is set, people will say it's the budget that's causing the tax rate increase or the tax increase. And 9 times out of 10, that's true, but not right now. In Portsmouth, these market values are going to be causing the majority of the increase in taxes, not the budget.
Interesting. And could you comment on, do you know what the breakdown was between the commercial values and the residential values in 2019, roughly?
I believe it was 58 to 42, 58 residential, 42 commercial. Now, that's not to say there won't be an increase in commercial property values. There will be, but the majority of the increase is going to be on the residential side. So we're not sure how much of a shift, but we're predicting there will be a tax impact on the residential properties more so than the commercial. But we have to remember also that our large apartment-type complexes are in that commercial base, same with the industrial. So they've been pretty strong, so they might help absorb some of the shift.
Sure. And hotels would fall in that bucket as well?
Hotels will fall in that bucket. Right now, the hotels, I'm not sure. In Portsmouth, we're pretty strong with our hotels, but throughout the state, they've been still having issues.
Yeah, there have been some places that have been severely impacted by COVID and what that means for people traveling and staying in hotels and that occupancy. Portsmouth is not really one of those places. People still like to come here. There's a lot to do outside, which makes people feel good about going and traveling and doing things during COVID. So it hasn't been the same kind of impact, but there are still hotels that are out there struggling with the occupancy and even keeping up after the shutdown in 2020.
Great. Thanks. I don't want to monopolize. Tom?
I have 2 unrelated questions. The first is, we've had one broker regularly tell us that there is a lot of empty space out at Pease, but the space is still under leases. Are those taxed at the current lease value, the income generated by those leases, or are they already factored in the
Well, it's
vacancy?
it's the vacancy that factors in. So every year, especially during revaluation, we look at what the current leases are. And they may be under a lease that's 3 or 5 years old, but we have to look at the current lease rate and then what the vacancy rate is. So if they were renting at a much higher rate and they're obligated under contract to pay it, even though it may have gone down $1 a square foot, we look at that $1 a square foot less, not what they were originally paying. We have to look at what the market is doing right now, not what the market was doing before COVID.
Okay, just to follow up on that. So if a tenant is still paying under its lease, but is not occupying the space anymore. They're paid on the lease value at that point?
They're paid on the market value. So regardless of whether they're occupying the space or not, if that is being rented and under a rental agreement to a taxable entity, they're paying either the airport district tax or the non-airport district tax, which is the full tax rate.
And under the income approach, it's whatever they're paying. So what I'm getting at is that,
It's the income approach is whatever the market is bearing, not what they're paying. It's based on the market. So if they've signed new leases within the last 2 years, we're going to look at new leases versus old leases.
but maybe I'm not being articulate enough on this, but I'm just trying to understand if there is a lease in place, whether it's a 3-year lease or was signed 10 years ago, and that's generating $25 a square foot, but that space is empty because the company has shrunk or gone off-site, that's still, does that rent that they're paying define the market?
No,
So-
because it's a prior market transaction, so we would have to look at the current market transaction. But if it's showing us there's no difference, then yes, we would still look at that.
And I think, just to go along with that, the vacancy is what an investor would expect to absorb as a cost. So if someone were to purchase it at this point in time in this market, what would they expect to absorb as a vacancy cost? So it may have been lower at one point in time, and now someone coming in to purchase that building may see a higher absorption of that vacancy rate. So that may impact it more than what you're seeing as a lot of vacant space, even though they are paying. What is that investor expecting to absorb as their vacancy, which may not be as great as what we're seeing for people not occupying the space.
So in other words, you may be getting the $25 per thousand. It was 5% vacancy. You're still getting the $25 per thousand, but investors got to look at the vacancy, which is now 10%, and that reduces the market value of the property.
I was going to ask you, so the market, the vacancy factor is 10% now, or is it higher?
Depends on the property. Depends on the property. We're seeing that we've been getting some information from brokers that Class B office is at 10%.
Okay. My unrelated question is, we've had many discussions over the last few years here about trying to deal with the comment that is often made by sometimes anti-development crowds that the cost, that the new tax revenue that's generated by new development is not, doesn't offset the added cost to the city. And I think that analysis largely comes from people say, well, our taxes keep going up every year. How come all this new development hasn't stopped that? So and I'm not asking you to respond to that, but we've tried to figure out a way of gaining the data to figure out how much extra tax revenue has been generated, sort of the before and after. So if you had a site that was developed downtown in 2010, if we looked at what that site was valued in 2009 and how much it generated in income then and taxes then, and then we look at it in 2021, we could suggest that this is the added tax revenue and this is how it's impacted the tax base. My question to you is that data easily extractable from your records, or is that something that somebody has to go through and look at every tax card for each property to try to figure out what it was assessed at in 2009 or whatever the year was before the building was put up?
Well, there's another factor that has to be calculated in there, and it's the market value impact. So it costs more to build than to buy, obviously. So when a developer comes in, they're calculating over a holding period, based on that cost, how much they're going to recapture in the market. So it's called discounted cash flow analysis. So they know they're not going to make any money up front, but over a 10-year holding period, that's when they're going to make their money. So when somebody says Portsmouth has got all this development, how come our tax rate isn't going down? Well, is going up. Well, it's not just that development, it's the market value of those properties that is also impacting their taxes. It's a very difficult thing to prove. Have you ever done that?
So what I would say is I think there's kind of twofold impact here. What you're talking about is the impact from maybe a vacant site to an improved site, and then what that impact would be over time. And if you could understand how much of a market increase every time a revaluation was done, that might be an easier thing to understand, because you could get back to 2009 values and then get through that of how much added value that could be over a period of time. Every time the market increases, like we've seen as long as I've been around the city, every time we see that, it impacts every property in a different kind of manner. So the way people purchase commercial property is different than the way someone might purchase a condo downtown. And so those things complicate what would seemingly be a simple calculation. But to your point, if you were looking for that data on a specific property, it would have to go tax card by tax card to understand what the initial value was pre-development to the post-development value.
And then calculate the market
Increases over time.
over time.
Yeah. Not to prolong this too much, because I know we're at a limited time, but, so it would be easy if I'm guessing with an undeveloped piece of property, because you actually have a value for the land itself separate from any improvements on it, right? And so I could trace that if I took a tax card from that property in 2010 and another one in 2022, the land value is, even though 2022 has a building value now on it, I could trace the change in the value or the assessed value of the land, and that would be my base for both 2010 and 2022. It would be the added value of the building on it.
So you could trace that land value from land value to land value and what that impact on the land itself is worth. But the building costs change as well over time. So the land value changes and the building values change. So, and those may change at different rates depending on what's happening in the market. Is land harder to come by? Does that make it a scarcity? Would people pay more for it now versus then? And as we know, building costs have gone up now, but they haven't gone up at the same rate over that period of time.
And every year during the budget, I give an estimated growth number to the finance director. Granted, it's just an estimate, but it would give you a good idea of how much growth the city has and how that impacts the budget and the tax rate. And then you can look at those during revaluation years, because I give that number before revaluation, and see what that potential growth number was, and then how much value was added during the revaluation. So if you're trying to figure out based on just the budget that impact, you might be able to do it that way also. And that's something the finance director could probably put together based on what I give her for growth estimates.
Would that report that you give differentiate between new construction and old and pre-existing?
Growth basically is new construction.
Okay, well, that might be worth pursuing that.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah,
Sarah?
so kind of in that same line, I think if we bring it up at a high level, I don't think the city has historically done a good job of talking about commercial contributions to the overall tax rate versus residential. So are there some high-level metrics where we can look at number of units changed over time, a percentage of revenue contributions changed over time, so that we can better educate folks to understand that, yes, there is more development, but it is also offsetting residential costs, even though those residential burdens may still continue to increase.
And what do you mean by units? Because we don't track tax per unit.
Whatever metric you're able to develop. So is it new development, number of properties, total revenue, high level, easy to understand metrics for folks?
I think that would be something that you would want from your planning department. They would be able to gather information from us, but
Okay,
I
so
give them a lot of information.
I'm not saying that that's you that needs to provide it. I'm saying the city in general needs to do a better job of providing this information.
Okay.
Everett?
Yeah, I think, Sarah, to your point, when we did some exhaustive studies around the parking garage and the demand for parking, and also what the additional supply did for commercial development, and one of the, and there were a number of slides and charts done, and one of them was what was the city's impact, commercial impact on the tax base. And what it showed was that Portsmouth had the lowest burden on residential taxpayers of any city in the state. So there were like 13 cities, quote, cities in New Hampshire, and Portsmouth was by far the least. Now, included in that, John Vahenko would have said, well, that includes the Schiller plant before it got revalued, but in any event. And I think, to your point, Sarah, right, I don't think that story gets told well enough, right, because Tom's question, why, taxes keep going up, we do all this development, why aren't our taxes impacted? I don't think it's a revenue issue, it's really kind of probably as much on the expense side, right? There's a lot of issue there, but Portsmouth had the least, as a city, had the least impact on residential taxpayers of any city in the
the
state.
lowest cost burden.
We still have that
One
study
thing-
hanging around.
I don't know, that was, 2017.
'Cause I'd love to know if that's still the case.
Yeah, don't know. It was pretty compelling.
Yeah.
I think everyone, this is what I tell everyone, is like we have 1,300 commercial properties making up 42% of the property values in the city of Portsmouth. That means just that statistic alone tells you that the commercial properties are offsetting the residential taxes.
Right.
That's exactly what I think we need to get the.
Yeah. I would just kind of thank you for perfectly laying out what I wanted to mention this morning was, I know we've talked for the last couple of years about sort of trying to capture some of this data and putting it in a form that's meaningful for us and that would then be meaningful for the residents and counselors. I know one of my plans after hearing about the revaluation coming up was to sort of reconstitute the data subcommittee. And I know Jacob has an interest in joining that. And I think as part of that, we would try to put together data requests that we've tried to outline and all the things we've talked about and work with planning and with the assessment department to try to call out some of that I know are concepts we've been trying to address, but that exactly hit on what you've all just mentioned and try to capture.
I think before we let Nancy run away, she created that deck, and I had to present it at the city council.
Great.
And I think you might have spoken in that city council.
She's already run away.
Yeah.
She's coming back this morning. So
She knows where everything's buried.
right, but that deck is
Yeah.
there someplace, because she's the one who put it together for us.
I had a couple questions.
That's great. Jacob?
Just kind of switching gears a little bit. So just from a historical context, when you typically see something like this and kind of focusing on like the residential and specifically the rental market, do you see any kind of statistical changes within the rental market year over year given these kind of changes, or has it stayed pretty steady?
Well, I've been here 20 years, so I've definitely seen a change in the rental market. It's not affordable to the average person anymore, and you can't afford a house, so it's not just in Portsmouth. You hear it throughout the nation at this point, or more so in the Northeast than anywhere else. You could just see by the amount of requests for rental property to be built in the city of Portsmouth that the demand is there. When I was talking to a contractor that was building out on Daniel Street, and at that time it was condos, everyone condo. And he stopped and he said, I make more money off of renting properties than I do off of selling them. So that is still true today. And if you just look at the average two-bedroom downtown Portsmouth is between $3,000 and $3,500. And some of them are almost $5,000.
Right.
So they're not going to build condos more than they're going to build rental property.
Absolutely.
Or they're going to build a rental property, and if the market changes, they will convert them to condos. It's very easy to do.
And then maybe from a commercial side, and maybe a question maybe for Ben, is do you see kind of your companies that are renting downtown, do you see them complaining about kind of higher rental costs or something like that? Is it more challenging for someone to come into town and start a business due to the rent of the individual spaces?
It's always been the case, as long as I've been here, which is 6 years now, so I don't quite have the depth of knowledge. But downtown is an expensive place to do business. From a storefront perspective to an office perspective, it is an expensive place, just like it is on the residential side. So, yes, you've heard that if you do not have a high-performing shop, particularly from a retail standpoint downtown, you will not make it. You cannot limp along with, like, average sales in this city, and still having some seasonality to our business, less now than we had previously, but some seasonality. You have to be able to perform in those summer months, so everything matters. Staffing matters, your hours matter. All these things play a big role into that. So sure, we hear those comments, but I think it's a well-known fact now. I don't think anyone gets surprised by that anymore. It's well-known, and they know that going into it. So it's the cost of doing business.
Cool.
And you're also seeing a change in the downtown also, whereas before, you never really heard of office coming downtown. Last 3 years, big demand for office space in downtown, and especially now because of the large office space not being as attractive versus being downtown where you have parking garages and the ambiance of the city. They're trying to attract people to work for them, and that's an attraction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just add to your comment about the housing downtown. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, there really wasn't the inventory in kind of apartment complexes or large buildings. I think it was mostly predominantly kind of existing rentals within older homes that were multifamily, but not nearly that scale. And I think that has just accelerated, and I think just hearing the pricing kind of underscores all the other things we were talking about with affordable housing. And
I think it's also important, and I can't remember the statistic off the top of my head. I think it's around 51% of our residents are renters. Is that correct?
I don't know. I don't know that
sounds
one.
about right.
Yeah. So I think that's also, I know from a council standpoint, when we talk about, there's always the great debate of, renters don't pay their tax burden and that's X, Y, and Z. I always like to bring up the number which is, it's a foolish notion. But
They do pay their tax
They
burden
do.
though, because the landlord's going to recapture that cost.
I send a lot of emails that state that. But I think it's an important metric to put out there to the population. When we're looking at West End Yards and the hate that you say back in the day Port Walk Place got and all of these things, that it's 51% of our residents live in those types of units.
I don't see that going away anytime too soon either.
I guess, anyone else have questions for our guests? Just one more question. When will the revaluation be complete? Will it be for the upcoming?
I'm planning on having a work session with the city council to go over where the changes are. I'd like to do that so they will be able to see the impact in certain areas, because not everyone's going to go up the same.
Yep.
The impact on commercial properties versus residential properties, where that shift would be. So that will happen sometime around August. I believe the timeline is to have it complete and hearings done end of August, beginning of September.
Yeah.
And then the tax rate set hopefully in October.
Great. Thank you.
Do we have time for one more question, or are we running behind? Or
I think we can make one more quick one.
It's a little bit of a piggyback on Tom's question.
Andy, use the mic.
And it's just a little more academic. So we see developers stand up in front of the planning board for their site plan review, talking about taxes and that offset that Tom was mentioning. This is kind of an academic question, but how is that first assessed value determined on new construction, like something big like a hotel?
So it's in stages. If it's vacant land, we look at the development approvals for the site and we'll value that. And then it's based on every April 1st, the level of completion of that structure, and that's how it's valued. So that's what happens is everyone sees all these permits coming in, the big, huge amount of money, and everyone has to remember that it's over time that they're taxed until they're fully complete. So you're not going to get that big windfall when they first come in. It's slowly over time. And usually, 2 years it's taking for a big complex to become fully complete. So you're not going to you'll see that a little bit every time affecting the tax rate.
Great. Good question. Thanks, Andy. All right. Well, thank you both for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got a few items here on our new other business. Ben, you are lead off. Do you have any?
Yeah, sure.
For us,
I'm actually going to share a presentation and do my best to do justice to a presentation that Darcy Knowles shared at our tourism summit, which was a week ago.
Can I ask some of the computer folks in the room, how do I show the full screen and get that nonsense right out of the way?
This arrow.
So at that summit, Darcy shared, she's doing our creative work for the arts and culture marketing campaign, and she shared some high-level overview of that campaign, and Sean and folks asked me to share that with you today. So the essence of the campaign is that the arts community and the culture community is at the very heartbeat of our community here in Portsmouth. It is in our soul. It makes us tick. It lives in us. And the mantra that we've been going with is feel the beat. So if you want to go to the next slide, perhaps. You can, yeah, I kind of covered that as I was stalling. The mission is to promote and highlight the arts and culture venues and community here in a post-pandemic world, to encourage people to attend in-person events and to come back out into our community. So the process that we went through was several discovery and feedback sessions. This is with a subcommittee of the Arts and Culture Committee, along with the full Arts and Culture Committee, work with the staff of the Chamber Collaborative, with the Blue Ribbon Committee and the marketing team, and a lot of discovery and question and answer periods with the arts and culture community. You can keep going. So the result is a brand-specific campaign that has been launched and is out as a short-term pilot project. It started a couple weeks ago, and you'll see advertisements in local paper on Sunday. You'll see some of it you will see because it's targeted for the Portsmouth market. Some of it is geo-targeted outside our community, so you will not see that. It's always tough to share the marketing that you do that you're not supposed to let people see locally. It's tricky, and it's a fully integrated marketing campaign. We can keep going. So overall, this is the brand we came with, that the heart of Portsmouth, and art being highlighted in that word heart, showing that it really is the heart. We came up with this brick heart concept, a little nod towards our historical brick markets and brick community downtown. But we really tried to capture all the various aspects of our arts and culture venues in this logo, which was not an easy task, because it's a very diverse community. There's a lot of different aspects to it, but at the center of that is the heart, and that's why that heart icon sits at the bottom of that. That'll be throughout our campaign. Keep going. And the true essence of it is we want people to go out. We want people to go out and see shows. We want people to go out and go to museums. We want people to go out and have culture and enrich their lives through that. So this is the campaign model that we have come up with. Go out in Portsmouth, and I think it's very cute. It's very catchy, and you'll see how that plays out here in the next couple slides. So we have a dedicated landing page. You'll see that in a second. There'll be print, digital, all these ads coming together. There's a TV commercial we can share. It's really come together quite nicely. So this is the landing page that you'll see. So if you go to the website there, go portsmouthnh.com/heart or heartofportsmouth.com, or we bought 20 URLs, so if you type Heart of Portsmouth anything, it's probably going to pop up. But it brings people right to this landing page. That top photo is a slider, so you see several different arts and culture venues. We've put together a monthly giveaway for people to go out, and that's really, I'll talk a little bit more about that. That's really a way to capture email addresses for folks and to better market to them again in the future. Here's an example of a print ad. We're not doing a lot of print just because print's expensive, and this is well funded, but we want to get the most for our dollars. So we are doing a few print ads, I believe 6 print ads total. This is an example of what that would look like. Digital ads along the same theme. These will be online in various forms, different outlets. This is, I think you could click on that link and it'll play the commercial. This is our 15-second commercial that was put together. This is going to be used on streaming platforms. So if you go to your Hulu or something like that, you will see this ad pop up, or a bunch of other places as well.
I don't know if I can because I haven't logged in.
I think you can probably click
Maybe
play.
I'll just make this go away.
Yeah, there you go.
It's down there at the bottom left.
Yeah.
Feel the beat. Portsmouth's art and cultural scene is truly the heartbeat of our seaside community. Follow the beat on exciting live entertainment and cultural events that will lift your spirits and enrich your life. We're ready for you this spring. Come out and experience the heart of Portsmouth.
So a quick little spot to get people excited, get them to come to the website and learn more about it.
Oh, boy. Now what? Oh, boy.
Putting you
Hold
through
on.
the paces this morning.
Now I just killed
Now you
it.
got to go back to there we go. Perfect.
There we go.
Hey.
You got it.
We got this. All right.
Good.
So this is that giveaway I talked about. People come here, they just fill out a quick little interest, quick little demographic form. A couple clicks, they put their email address in. We're giving away a night out in Portsmouth every month through this process. But really, the only goal of this form, although it's nice to get some of this information, is to get their email address so that we can better market to them in the future. So, we just started this process. I actually have no idea how many have been submitted. I was just probably should have looked that up, but hopefully that's getting some good attention for us. Keep going. So here's where you'll see it. You'll see it at Seacoast Media Group, online and in print, Google Display, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. That's that streaming service I told you about. So if you're on Hulu, Video on Demand, Roku, any of those platforms, you'll see that 15-second spot coming across as long as you meet all our demographic and geo-fencing and all those fancy things I don't really understand. Yeah, it's really creepy.
I think that's the last slide, right?
Yeah, that is the last slide. So that's the campaign that is underway. It launched probably about 3 weeks ago now, and it's definitely a ramp up. It'll slowly be getting out more and more over the next couple weeks. So we're excited about that. Hopefully, it's going to bear some great return for our arts and culture community, and it's been really good. In addition to that, we had a wonderful tourism summit. Thank you to the city manager and mayor for speaking at that. That was a great event. That was a week and a half ago now. Had a wonderful business after hours last night. So everything is kind of off and running for the chamber in the springtime. It's a very busy time of year for us. I will just mention between now and our next meeting is Restaurant Week. I think that was mentioned earlier today. If you like to dine out, that was a good time to get out and enjoy some restaurants. So that is the 21st to the 30th, I think, if my memory serves me correct. So, but get out and there we go. No, that's Hit the Decks. Hit the Decks is coming in May. So we'll talk about that another day. Yeah, that's a good one.
Councilor Lombardi?
Yeah, I would just add, one of the things the council did vote on the last meeting was to help Prescott Park, the nonprofits in Prescott Park, by reducing their fees by 1/3. So just a little bit of help to those arts and culture organizations.
That's great.
Thank you. Tom?
And will this site allow a viewer or user to hook into different venues in Portsmouth?
Yeah, there's two big buttons on the site. One says Explore Venues or something along those lines, and that brings up a list of all our arts and culture venues. Both members and non-members of the chamber are included there, and that was quite a task for our staff. Our system is not meant to display non-members, so we had to do quite a bit of reconfiguration of our site to allow non-members to be on it, because it was never designed for that. So we worked through that, so that took some time, and so they are hopefully all up there. If anyone sees anyone missing or anything like that, just let us know. It's not intentional. We just, it's hard to get everyone on the list, so.
Great. Thanks. And if no one has anything else for Ben, we'll shift to City Council update. Either of our councilors have anything they want to
do it?
You can do it.
Yeah.
I like to just add in.
Okay, well,
Vince, grab the mic, please.
Council did a number of things in the past meeting. One of them was to adopt various resolutions changing the value of a person's assets to qualify for tax relief. And there were 3 resolutions that included, one was for disabled, one was for just elderly, one was for disabled, and one was for the disabled veterans. So those were all, I think, very good resolutions that
It's great.
is helpful to the people. The other was we had a vote on discussion from the Parking and Safety Committee, Safety and Parking Commission, whatever it is, about using some of the loading areas and turning them into parking spaces at off hours.
That's going to provide an additional, I think, 22 spaces. So they did a study to look at eliminating some load-in zones, i.e. if you look at the one on Bridge Street that really never gets used, and say the one in front of Cup of Joe at Commercial Alley, that's not really used after 3 p.m. So after 3 p.m. it will turn into spots. Bridge Street, I believe, is being eliminated, and then throughout the city, and some won't be touched at all that are high-functioning ones. So that should bring around 22 spots.
And is that a permanent change? Or
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
It's a permanent change until the other changes that PTS brings to the council are memorialized in one effort called the Omnibus. So yes, it will be. It's a temporary to permanent solution, and I only want to correct you because it's a better correction. We get 39 parking spaces out of this conversion. So we'll see how this works, and then the council will be asked in August to memorialize all the changes PTS recommends.
Phil, just one of the flyers went out this week, and the signage will be up either late this week or early next week.
that's great.
And then I guess another significant thing was that we accepted money from ARPA for the wastewater infrastructure thing of, almost $2.1 million, so.
And I think to touch on one of the things that Vince first said about the elderly credit, we all hear, that we want our elderly long-term residents to be able to stay in their home. And so I believe, and I wish Roseanne was still here, the asset limit was what, 137. It was pretty low. And if you're drawing off that monthly, and that's your only source of income besides, say, Social Security, so we raised it up to, I believe, $500,000 for asset level, and then income level, I believe, was raised not too extreme, a few $1,000s. Yeah. And we'll have. Right now, it's hard for us to know, and with the other 2 resolutions, how that will affect the tax burden for everyone else. Yep. Obviously, by the time assessments are done, and after a year or so, we'll know kind of what that means for the rest of the group. But I believe when you look at the veteran tax, there was, I think, Susan, it was like 0.03 cents for the mill of where it affected us. Yeah. So it was very, very low on all 3 of those resolutions, but the council really felt it was important to, as we look at elderly long-term residents, and then our veterans and our disabled veterans. And so we were kind of just, for the veteran taxes, filling in the gaps of the people that weren't affected.
Great. Good.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Unless you have more.
Nope, I'm good.
We've got the outdoor dining request approval update. I know that's been solved. Sean, do you want to?
Just real quick, as of 2 o'clock yesterday, 10 restaurants have been approved for outdoor dining. There's another 19 outstanding, so a total of 29 have applied to date.
Do we know what the numbers were the last 2 years?
49-ish in 2020 and 51 or 52, and I think one never fully laid out the outdoor dining Tuscan in 2021. So they're coming in.
And more.
And we're going to. Do we want to talk about what you and I talked about last night?
Yeah. I asked the city manager. We had, I think, had an initial drop date of April 4th, but upon
for the Jersey barriers.
For the Jersey barriers, but upon talking to some of the restaurant owners, I think we're going to send out a poll viewpoint to see if people want that delayed a little bit. I think it will show good faith to our retailers, to our other, some of the more acrimonious people in the community. that they're not going to just be dropped and sit empty. I think we've had a little bit colder of a spring than the previous 2 years, I think, with indoor dining still open. Although we all know that there are people in our community that are still not comfortable going inside. So we'll send out that and kind of potentially push it back, would we say 2 weeks?
We can message this and view permit to the food service folks and get a sense of what might work. It would be good from a coordination and logistics standpoint to have DPW do this once or in one effort. So we'll get a sense of where people are at when we ask them in view permit. We'll work with staff to make that happen.
Great. Ben, did you have something you wanted?
Well, that was my question. I have talked to a couple restaurateurs that know they don't plan to start outdoor dining till May, and they plan to finish it at the end of September, and they just have written off the colder months on the outside. So I didn't know what ability was to delay those deployment of those barriers so that we're not just taking up space to take up space, but it sounds like it's not really best practices, perhaps. But anyways, that's my question.
Great.
And Ann Weidman would want us to know that planters can go out the third week in May to be planted, so they'll be placed and planted at that time again by the Eco Club and the fabulous volunteers.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so the next we have is the proposed June 3rd meeting. Just putting it on everyone's radar. I believe we're going to have that as our annual meeting out at Pease. Get an update from the chairman, and I think there's some topics pertinent to EDC that are going to affect the community that are being considered out there. So I think that's a timely meeting. So I hope everyone can join us for that. I think we can probably run a little more quickly through the next couple. I would just ask everyone to be thinking about future potential presentations. I know we talked about one this morning as we kind of lay out the roadmap for the second half of the year. Curious to hear if there's other groups besides the one we typically have in for periodic updates. If there's any that come top of mind, just I would say send an email out to either Sean or myself, and we'll start to circulate through those and try to get that laid out soon. And then we've got other business. If anyone has other topics, questions.
A quick thing. The meeting or the tour of the makerspace was an excellent thing, and we learned a lot, and that is a little incubator space for business, and it's a very worthwhile thing. And also, then the other thing is that Paul Breen is going to address the City Council on the
18th of April.
18th meeting. So everyone's welcome to come. There'll be no public comment to him. It'll come after public comment, but there's obviously questions from the council.
Great. Thank you. So we have public comment here. I know we're expecting guest of honor shortly.
She's here. I've asked her to come in, and these folks, I don't know if they'd like to provide public comment. They're here because of Nancy.
Great. Well, let's...
We also have one joining us on Zoom. I'll bring her up as well.
Great. Thank you all for joining us. Nancy's living her best life.
I know.
Hey!
Stop it. Like an endless goodbye. Don't talk about it.
So I'll just say that I have a book here that I have a book here that we're giving to Nancy as a gift. I would invite everyone to come have a chance to sign it. They'll have some pens before she leaves, and I would just invite anyone as we go around the room before we close the meeting if they want to share a few words about maybe their time with Nancy and how all the work and service that she's given to the city has affected them over her tenure here. I think the city has seen a tremendous amount of change, and she's been instrumental in so much of that, and I think does things big and small and does all of it effortlessly and selflessly. So I think much of the city's success that we all enjoy today is a testament to all the work that she's done with so many of us throughout the entire community. So I know I'm very appreciative, and know others have many stories and anecdotes or
I
comments.
just want to share, like I shared with staff, that I was thinking about the 400th anniversary next year, and then I looked at how many years I've been here, and I was horrified that it's 9% of the city's No millennial would believe that, right? That's a long time.
Well done. So I'm going to bring the book over next to Nancy. So,
Alan, do you want to go next?
welcome.
Let's just pass it around.
I'm a weeper, so all I'm going to say is I'm going to miss you more. See, I knew I was going to do that. More than you'll know. I appreciate your friendship, your collaboration, our occasional fetching to one another over silly things that are going on, and wish you nothing but the best for the future.
I think we'll still see each other. Thank you so much.
Definitely.
Mr. Chair, can I call up Nancy Pearson, who's joined us on Zoom, so she can join?
I would love it if you did.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Nancy. Hi, everyone. Hello. Good morning, friends.
Good morning.
I just wanted to say that Nancy and I have known each other over a decade now, and if it wasn't for Nancy, I don't actually think I would have gotten involved in our local government politics beyond Art Speak. But she was such a champion for not only the work of Art Speak, but just of good decision making. She's so darn practical. She's so easy to work with, and she just made the whole process welcoming and enjoyable. And when I decided to actually get more involved in city government, I sat down with Nancy to get a real understanding of how things would work. And she's just invaluable. She's a wonderful, kind person. She's one of the worker bees. I'm a worker bee. I appreciate that in her. And what a gigantic hole she's going to leave. I don't envy the person stepping into her shoes. I just adore you on every level, and I'm so happy for you to take this well-deserved break.
Thank you, Nancy. It was great times working on the cultural community here. It's great to have Chris here as well. I think she was really instrumental in inspiring me to really understand that part of this unique city. So, and I just want to tell you that Sean, my successor, he's up to the challenge. I think he's wonderful. He said the other day, he said, after one of the farewells, the endless farewells, he said, I'm going to need prosthetics for the shoes to fill, he kept saying. So, no, he's going to do really well here, and it's been really great for me to have an opportunity to, do some crossover work with him the last few years. So when are you coming back? You look very relaxed, and the background is killing me. It's raining here.
Here we go. I'm coming back on Wednesday. Cannot wait to come home.
Great.
I'll go quickly, Mr. Chair, because I've had a couple chances at this apple. But we had a staff thank you and farewell for Nancy on Monday, and the city attorney had a lot to say, but one of the best things that he said was how wonderful the universe is that brought all of us to be with and among and learn from Nancy. So that was hard to say. I've got a quote for Nancy, because I like quotes now. Don't cry because it's over, smile because it's happened. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I can't believe, Nancy, it's been over 20 years, and we started on the PEDLEP board together, and then, I think 22 years for me on the EDC, and your support and guidance, and, really, when people think about Nancy, at least in my view, it's her ability to collaborate and be inclusive of everyone. And if you spend time with Nancy, she makes everyone else feel important, right? So it's her humility I'll just miss so much, and you were just, incredibly valuable to all of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Everett.
I want to thank you, Nancy, for helping to onboard me and everybody. So you always took the time to get to know everybody, and all roads to Portsmouth seem to lead through you. It was amazing how many conversations. Now you're going to make me cry. How often you'd come up in conversation. And the last thing I'll add is I was looking for retirement cards, and they were all about relaxing and enjoying yourself, and I can't imagine you just sitting back and doing nothing. So I'm happy for you for your next adventure, because I know there will be adventure. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
I think I've been involved in boards over 25 or 30 years, and as well as appearing in front of a number of boards and commissions over the years. And I have to say that I have found the staff of the city to be the most enjoyable, informed, caring people that I've experienced anywhere. And I put you right up at the top of that list. My biggest regret is that it's only been the last 3 years that I've had an opportunity to work with you. I knew you before that, but not in any real sense. And it has been a pleasure being on this commission while you were here. And I kind of got a sense that this was coming in the past year, because, as many know, I retired at the end of July, and I sort of announced it earlier in the year, and virtually every month she'd say, "So, are you getting ready for that retirement? And what's it like to be retired?" And so until you finally revealed that, I started having this feeling that you were going to tell us that. So wish you all the best in whatever you decide to do next.
Thanks, Tom. Like Tom, I would echo the sentiment that I'm envious of everyone who's got to spend all this time with you. Haven't only really known you in this capacity the last few years, but it's a very full circle moment for me, having grown up with the boys.
She went to high school with my sons.
Yeah, and so I just know how much of a loving, caring person you are outside of this community, but also amplified within this community. And for me, it's a very bittersweet moment. Coming into the council and all of that, was so excited to work with so many staff members that have decided to retire. So while I'm so grateful.
Don't take it personally.
You guys were worn out, I get it. But I'm so excited for this next adventure for you, and thank you. And as a younger woman, to see the leadership that our city has built around women is a really powerful example.
I'm really happy to see you be here in this city, because I know a little bit of your history and all the remarkable things you did. So to see you in the position you are here is, I continue to wish you the best. I think it's going to be wonderful. So call on me, whatever.
Yeah, I will.
I'll jump in. Like Nancy Pearson mentioned, I'm very confident I wouldn't be here without Nancy Carmer here. And it's been great to hear really good advice and inside City Hall and outside City Hall advice as a commercial broker. So our overlap, I think, it's probably been 5 or 6 years on that, and I'm really, really grateful that that's been able to happen. And also, thanks for the onboarding, keeping me in touch with what's going on with this group, and wasn't here every month. So much gratefulness to have been working with you.
I think this is the third opportunity I've had to say, so we need fresh content. But I was just sitting here listening to everyone's remarks and all the emotion. I just was struck by just how genuine of a person you are, and how you care about this community deeply, and you just bring a very pragmatic and thoughtful and caring approach to it, and without the ego or anything like that. You just want what's best for this community, and it's been a pleasure to be part of that.
Thanks, Ben.
Well, I'm another person who actually looked forward to working with you. Having been on the HDC for a number of years, I met with the city manager and, knew you across the hall. And I also have just heard wonderful things from my wife, Ellen Feinberg, about you forever. And so I was ecstatic to be on the EDC because I would be able to work with you. But, and I guess I'm sorry that you're leaving, but I also think it's wonderful. Your contributions to the city have been amazing. I know that, if not directly, indirectly. And we'll miss you.
I'll miss you guys.
So I've probably worked with you or known you for the least amount of time among anyone here. But I know that 5 years ago when I first reached out about getting involved with the EDC, I was 21, 22 years old and knew nothing. We chatted, you were so welcoming, so easy to talk to, and some people might have just said, brush off a 22-year-old, no experience. But truly the first experience of city government was talking to you, and so now 5 years later, here I am, done all these different things. So I really appreciate all that you've done, and, helped many people like me and everyone around, apparently, to, in city government.
Great, thanks.
Hi, Nancy.
Sean.
It's been great working with you for the last 3 or 4 years outside of City Hall, and as advertised, this is the end of my 3rd week. This is an amazing opportunity for me. I don't say this often, but I'm honored to follow you into this role. Thank you.
I'll just add that I couldn't agree more with just about everything everyone said, and a couple of things in particular resonated. I, like Jacob, too, at one point was a pretty ambitious young guy who probably had no business being on the EDC. And in true Nancy fashion, she was welcoming and very supportive, and throughout always just wants the best for everyone who she interacts with, whether it's businesses, whether it's people. I think she just supports everyone and encourages them in such a genuine way. I know I've experienced that, and I think everyone else in this room probably has too. So I could go on and on. I think all of us could, but thank you so much for all you've done for me and for the city. I have some words from Dana Levinson. He couldn't be here that I thought I might share with everyone. We kind of asked Dana for some of a bit of a highlight reel and some of the major events that you've sort of overseen during your tenure, and he's shared some of those and some kind words. So I'll just run through what he's shared. First and foremost, Nancy has always been even-keeled, objective, proactive, and a great listener. She's been a consensus builder and a positive ambassador for the city. She set a high bar for ethical and professional leadership of the EDC. She was responsible for developing and nurturing important relationships in the greater Seacoast. Particularly noteworthy is the close working relationship with the Chamber, Pease Development Authority, Great Bay, UNH, and the Small Business Development Center. She was a key player in the Save the Shipyard effort. She worked tirelessly on parking issues. I think all of us could attest to that.
So glad to be shedding that.
And she was also instrumental in the Sheridan Garage effort. Another effort was the wayfinding in our shared bicycle program. Years of planning to upgrade the corridors into the city, Market Street Extension, Islington Street, and Route 1, many of those which we all enjoy. Now, help develop and promote the three-legged stool approach to economic development between our commercial, cultural, and historic and retail legs. Instituted an annual project and priority outline for the EDC with annual reviews as to performance. So I know there's many other big and small projects, but just wanted to share that and Dana's kind words, which I think, again, resonate with all of us. I just want to invite our members of the public, if anyone wanted to come share, you're welcome to do so. Come on up.
I'll give up my chair gladly. And I would also add that Valerie Rochon wanted to be here either in person or on video. She couldn't, but Valerie sends her love and her best wishes.
Mayor?
Well, I was, before that laundry list, I had something slightly different to say, but I think I'll say it anyway. Some of us were together earlier in the week with Nancy to help the Blue Ribbon, the Arts and Culture Committee understand what we originally did for the Culture Plan, which was now almost 24 years ago when we started that, which was when I first started working with Nancy long before I was a counselor, and the reflection on the cultural plan, several members of the committee asked, how was a plan done where we have accomplished so many things over time? Because, that was a time people have a hard time remembering what it was like, but we didn't have 3S, we didn't have the loft, we didn't have PMAC. We had really very little, and we were coming out of a fairly negative time for culture. So people asked, what was it that has had it endure for 25 years, which was never the intent. It's the kind of thing you should do every 5 years. And in thinking about it, we said, well, it was such a relentlessly positive experience. Coming back to think everything about it was positive. And several people have weighed in since then saying, yes. And, my hope that I said was that I would hope that this cultural plan, which is about to launch, would help be a reset for the city, because we're coming out of just relentless negativity of all types, and we forget that we've been there before, and we've come out of it, and we've gone into positive times with positive people. And Nancy kind of was emblematic of that. So what I was going to say is, somehow Nancy has been with the city all these years and has only ever been part of positive projects. But I don't think that's really true. When I heard Dana's list, I think Nancy has just brought a positivity to each project that has enabled people not to get weighed down in the negativity, which, I and probably many of you simply cannot understand in a city that we're so lucky to live in and be in. And so I think this cultural plan reset would be something I know you'll want to be involved with. So I can't see you fully retiring.
It's true. It's true. Thank you, Chris.
Go this way, sure. Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning, Cliff.
So when I was looking to get a little more involved in city government, I had heard from a lot about you, caliber of person in the government, from my friend Tom Farini, and I got elected, and I was thinking about boards and commissions, and Jack Blaylock asked me to serve on the EDC, and I said, oh, that's great, I can work with Nancy Carmer. But then I went and looked at when the meetings are. And I'm kind of a nocturnal guy. I'm a nighttime guy. I just am.
It's harsh.
And I said, oh, really? Every Friday? I mean, the first Friday of the month? And so I was always pulling in here, screaming in on two wheels right about when the meeting started. But it was always worth it because we got to do really good work, and I appreciated everything that you did. And the next term up, I insisted as much as I could with the next mayor that I continue to serve in the EDC, and that was one thing he was able to agree with me on. So that was helpful, and I appreciated that. And,
me too.
And I did. I always talk to people about what I enjoyed working in the Portsmouth government was the high caliber of competent, intelligent, passionate, dedicated people, and I don't think anyone represents that better than you. So good luck.
Thanks, Cliff. I'm glad you had 2 terms on the EDC. That was great. And just, one of the great things that I got to do, one of the tasks, Sean, you'll get to do this too, is keep attendance of the EDC members. And you got a star because you made every meeting, even though you came in on 3 wheels each time.
Well,
I'm scared.
I should tell you, as a citizen of Portsmouth, we live in a city, and I live in a city that has been made wonderful by Nancy Carmer. And I am part of the brigade of people who were brought into city government and public service by Nancy Carmer. And I wouldn't have known so many things after 6 years on the Economic Development Commission if I did not work with Nancy Carmer. Besides all of the characteristics you've mentioned, I'll just reiterate how very smart she is, how well she understood the economic data, how good she was at understanding how politics and economics work together. Superb. High-level government official, could work in any government on the planet and be a fine, fine addition. So I refer to her at times, she may not know this, as the great Nancy Carmer. Because if we didn't have people like Nancy in our government, we would not be who we are. And, you know, a lot of us in an economic environment think of our private sector involvement. And I work in the private sector and spent some time in government. People who work in government have a much broader mission than many people who work in business. As broad as some businesses' missions may be, and we can think of the mega examples, the mission of government is really broad. And I learned from Nancy Carmer that on an economic development commission, you can understand how a population feels about what goes on in its city. One last thing, I did enjoy, and after I got off the Economic Development Commission, because of the Chinese screen of John Bohenko, I was no longer interacting as much with Nancy, but I did anyway. And one of my favorite things while I was on the commission would be to just look at her deadpan and say, you know, we really need to talk more about parking. Thank you very much for your many years of hard work.
Thank you, Tom.
So much has already been said, and we don't need to rehash it. You've probably heard it 4 different meetings so far in the last day. And I just want to add, in addition to my time on council and at EDC and experiencing Nancy in that way, Nancy was also a peer of mine. Like, my job was somewhat similar in a partnership through my various roles. So I really got to experience Nancy from a different perspective and see her at work serving our residents and our entrepreneurs and our business owners here in Portsmouth and advocating for Portsmouth in New Hampshire and doing all those good works. And she's always done an amazing job. And it was my great pleasure to be a partner with you when I could. And I really hope to be catching a coffee or lunch or beer sometime soon to catch up.
All of the above. Thank you, Josh. Oh my gosh, hi, Ed.
Hi, Nancy. So Nancy, so I served on the EDC until I moved out of town. Sorry. I love being on the commission.
We drove you out. 7:30 meetings.
And just to, everyone stole my thunder, but I just thought, you're so positive, professional, smart. You are such a great ambassador to our city. I just can't, thank you enough for what you've done, and just pleasure working on all those parking issues with you as well, way back when. So thanks and best wishes, and just
Thank you.
Have a great retirement.
It was great. It was great having you on the EDC. Come back to the city and keep serving. Yeah.
Could happen.
Well, Nancy, I'm happy you solved all the parking issues. I don't have to think about them any longer. I, unlike most everyone else here, has only been able to work with you for a short time. And those that have heard me speak about the city, I've fallen in love with the phrase of the city of the open door. And it means a lot to me. But it comes into greater clarity when I think about what you've done for the city, and that's keep the door open for many, many decades. There was ample opportunity in parts of our history, whether it was Keys shutting down, whether it was the fight to keep the shipyard, and I thank you very much for the T-shirt that says "Mission Accomplished, Save Our Shipyard." Whether it was recently with COVID or the tech bubble bursting on the East Coast, there were so many times that we've had to reinvent ourselves. And I think when we were chatting recently, you said you're nearly at 10%. We'll round up to 10% of the entire history of Portsmouth, serving Portsmouth. And for a 400-year city, that's an impressive track record. It takes more than a mild interest. It takes a passion, and we've been the beneficiary of your passion to continually to reinvent and help Portsmouth realize what it is tomorrow, which is a culmination of what it was yesterday, but not just that. So there was a poem that I found on the back of a letter or a pamphlet that the Chamber produced 100 years ago next year. And I would like to read that to you now because I think it embodies much of what you have been tasked with doing for so long. So if you'll indulge the mayor reading a poem.
I would love that.
So time wags on, relentless still, unheeding the wailing, the plaintive pleading of the old days. Yet we must admit that if the town grows old, it likewise too grows new. That was Benjamin Collinswood, Portsmouth. So I appreciate all of the work that you've done to help realize that we are an old town by forcing us sometimes, but always helping us to grow new. So for that, I thank you for your service to the city of Portsmouth.
Thank you, Mayor. Wow. Do you want me to say something? I wasn't, first of all, I wasn't prepared to be surrounded by all of you remarkable people, and it's really you people that have, kept me going here and kept me passionate about the city, and in fact, run the very businesses that make this place unique. And I have the best job in the city. I don't have to work for a board that's regulatory. We're policy, and it's those regulatory boards where I think some of the really difficult challenges that maybe Chris was talking about, or some of those elected boards that maybe sometimes show the darker side of where we are. But it's always been a pleasure working with this group because we get to think about, as the mayor just kind of pointed out, we get to think about what we are representing from the past, but how we want to make this place better for the future. And that means making us a world-class city, progressive. I know, Tom's doing a lot of work on his subcommittee / working group on making us a really smart city. And it's just, this place continues to amaze me that, we're able to kind of, deflect the downturns that we've seen, keep a shipyard running, in this day and age. It's just spectacular in my mind. And I really, I was saying to people before, it's like, this is a really hard job to leave. And, but it's time for me to kind of do the next adventure, as Sarah said, and put these younger people that are around us today, and I had no idea, honestly. Thank you for saying that, all of you. I really had no idea that I influenced people to be part of government. And for those that it was a bad experience, I apologize. I remember when Tom told me he was going to run for council. Do you remember?
I do.
I was like, you should really think long and hard about that. Do you know how much time that takes? Do you know how much dedication? But you were hopeless. That was the path you were on, before I met you. So,
debatable.
But I am proud to work with people that started somewhere in one of the commissions or boards and entered into government and have really made it a great place to work. So, I appreciate Nancy being on this, and I appreciate Dana's, and you people coming out on a Friday morning, April 1st, early in the morning. I really do appreciate that, and we'll just fondly remember everything that we've all worked on together. It's been memory lane for me, cleaning out 35 years of files in the day of electronic files. I really felt like a dinosaur, but it was kind of fun reminiscing about the laundry list that Dana enumerated. And this commission has done remarkable work, really remarkable work. And I think there's been some frustration because we're more of a policy board and we're more of a visionary board, and it's harder to make a big splash or make certain projects happen. But if you look at it in a longer lens, as many of you have said, we've worked on some really good things that have changed the face of the city. And so I wish everybody luck going forward, and don't be a stranger. I'm not going far. So thank you, everybody.
So we are fortunate to have some coffee and beverages. I think we'll adjourn the meeting here if I have a motion.
Bye, Nancy.
Move to adjourn.
Second. Great. Meeting is adjourned. I hope you can all join us and hang out and chat.